another interesting story that I recall, and it deals really with this sense of humour that spirit guides have, that they encourage us to have as well. Many years ago, back in the mid-70s, we had a leaking pipe in the bathroom, and it was one of the old Ascot water heaters. So I took the casing off and located that the water was leaking from the heat exchanger. And I disconnected the pipe and tried to get the heat exchanger out so I could have a better look, and realised that it was too complicated for me to do. Now, as an engineer and design engineer at the time, and used to servicing all our vehicles and stripping engines down and putting new suspensions on, taking a pipe to pieces was easy peasy. Anyway, I went to put it, I thought, well, I'd better call the gas board or a plumber. So I tried to put it all back together again, and got it all bar the last pipe that I disconnected. But the pipe had sprung, and I tried to get it to match up with its corresponding pipe so I could tighten the joint up. And do you think that would go? No way. I finished up laying on the bathroom floor trying to work out how to get the two pipes level. And I could hear this laughter. And I turned my head round, and I could see a Native American Indian chief, one that I was aware of from time to time, sitting on the edge of the bath, laughing his head off. And I said, mentally, okay, clever clogs, how would you fix it? And instantly, in my head, like telepathy, instantly, I knew how to fix it. And that's what he was saying. It works by telepathy, by the way, guides communicating, not necessarily in words in the ear. So anyway, it said, why don't you use a spanner to lever the pipe up to put it in position before you tighten the nut? So I did, and it worked. Got it back together in no time. So I thought, I've just been told how to do my job by a Native American Indian who probably never had experience with putting pipes together in his wigwam. And then he faded from my vision. Mm-hmm. Yes, that was, I thought that humorous.
We've had quite a few humorous things.
Yes, we have. That's one that comes to mind.
That's funny.
Another one that comes to mind, but not quite so humorous. In 1978, my father died, despite the healing that he had, because he had lung cancer. Cause he was a heavy smoker most of his life, and he had lung cancer. And he had healing from myself and several other healers, but he still died in 1978. But the amazing thing was the doctors couldn't understand why he had no pain whatsoever and didn't need painkillers. So at least that was the blessing from the healing. He was meant to go. That was his death day. Anyway, I was really upset. That really got to me. And I said, that's it. I've been doing this healing, serving the spirit world and God and whatever. I'm not going to do any more. I said, that's it, I'm stopping. No more healing. So I was badly hurt inside. I suppose a few weeks went by, and a medium that I saw at Chesham Spiritualist Church one evening, his name was Clive Daniels, and he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Names, descriptions, accuracy was 100%. Well, afterwards, I didn't go there to get a message. I just went to keep a friend company who happened to be chairman at the time. Anyway, afterwards I spoke with Clive Daniels, and I said, I wouldn't mind sitting with you. You're excellent. So he said, okay, well, here's my number. Give me a ring. We'll put it in the diaries. So I arranged to go and see him. And he lived near Harrow, but where we went was Kenton Spiritualist Church, who he was president of. I opened the door to walk in, and there he was, and greeted me and said, sit down at this chair and put your hands on the table. And he sat down opposite me and put his hands on top of mine. And immediately he went into like a semi-trance, because he went, oh. He said, I have a Zulu warrior here who helps you with the healing, which was 100% true. So he couldn't possibly have known that. And he is saying, why have you stopped doing the healing? And my reply was very sarcastic, and I said, well, he should know. Clive Daniels went, oh, like that, and he spoke in a very deep voice. And he said, who are you to decide who lives and who dies? He was referring to my father at the time. And he said, your father figure is happy and is very well, and he's fine in his new world. It's the afterlife frequencies. And then he said, it is our wish that you continue with the healing. And that was it. Yes, a finger wag. So that was it. About 10 minutes, it was all over. So Clive Daniels said, no charge. He said, if you want to put some money in the box, he said, fine. So I just put some money in the collection box. And that was it. Drove back home, 20 miles. And I thought, I've just been given an ear bashing by a Zulu. It was rather, it made me giggle. Anyway, I still hadn't started the healing again for a couple of weeks, wondering how I could get back to doing that. I was taking our dog for a walk round the block, and a lady coming the other way, when she got level with me, she stopped and looked, and she said, Brian? I said, yes. Brian Sadler? Yes. She said, you gave me healing at Chesham Spiritualist Church not so long ago. She said, are you still doing the healing? And I was about to say no. And she said, only our dog has got severe arthritis in the hips. I wondered if you could come and give him some healing. Well, I couldn't say no to a dog, because I love them to bits. And having got a dog of our own, I could understand. I couldn't refuse. So I said, okay, yes, I'll come and give the dog some healing. So we fixed a date, and round her house I went. She opened the door to the lounge and let me in where the dog was, laying in the hearth with the head on the hearth near the fireplace. So it acknowledged me, it lifted its head and looked at me and put its head back. Well, I knelt down to scan the dog's body with my hands, because that's how I detect where the problem is that needs healing. And the problem doesn't have to be where pain is, it can be somewhere else in the body. It doesn't have to mean that the area where pain is the problem area. So I scanned the body, and when I got near the hind legs of the dog. I could detect it was like pins and needles in my hands, very severe. So I knew that I was in the right position. Anyway, I just started to give healing over the area where the problem was. And the dog lifted its head and looked at me straight in the eyes. And I looked at the dog. We stared at each other. What seemed a long time, just kept looking at each other. And tears started to roll down my cheeks. I started to cry. And the dog still looked, and I cried and cried and cried. I tried not to make too much noise because the lady was sitting behind me and I didn't want her to know I was crying, but the tears were pouring down my cheeks. And when I felt the pins and needles ease off, I knew that the dog had received some degree of healing. And I stood up to leave, and I looked at the dog and said thank you. And I felt all the hurt and anger drain away, because I'd felt that God wasn't flavour of the month for quite a while and I'd refused to do the healing, but all that had gone. Yeah, I just got back to healing a dog. And I thought, I came to give the dog healing, but the dog healed me. And that was very emotional for me, to think that the dog had healed me. And that's when I said thank you to the dog. Yes, a sense of humour is what I like about the guides in particular, because they live, their world is very serene and peaceful. So when they come back to our vibrations on the earth frequency, it must feel very uncomfortable for them, but they do it out of service to the Great Spirit. As my American Indian chief used to call the Great Spirit God when he was on the earth. And I've had an incident in Harrow, or Ruislip near Harrow, where one of my teachers who taught me the art of mediumship, although I always said I didn't want to be a medium, but seeing spirit so clearly, he asked me to join his group. And one evening we were sitting around in a semicircle, and Derek said to his wife Eileen, "There's a guide standing next to Brian. Tell me who he is, describe him." Or describe them, I think he said. Yes, describe them. Not him. And Eileen said straight away, "It's a lady with long blonde hair with a headband." And Derek went, "Wrong, try again." And then as I went into like a serene meditation, I could see it was an Arab. An Arab guide who I linked with a little while back from there. And there Eileen said, "Oh, no, it's an Arab. I can see an Arab with a black headband and white headdress." And Derek said, "Correct. You didn't tune in properly. That's why you mistook him for a woman with a long headdress." But nearly there. So you see, that is a lesson in tuning in properly, not guessing. Another incident that concerns spirit guides that I laugh about now, but it wasn't funny at the time, was when I had an appointment as a guest medium at Hunton Spiritualist church.
Where?
Huntingdon.
Oh,
Huntingdon. And it was one of my favourites because there was always good response from there, and it was well attended. And Patricia and I arrived for my evening clairvoyance, and was shown into the building. As I walked through the main doors, a lady greeted me, and it was packed. It was full, and they were still bringing chairs in from one of the annexes, putting them in the aisles. And I said to the lady, "Wow, it's crowded tonight." And she said to me, "Yes, they've come to see you." Well, that went to my head a bit. Usually I'm a humble sort of guy, but as Patricia will tell you. But that did really went to my head a bit. And I thought, wow, they come to see me. Wow. Anyway, the service started, and I was introduced and gave a short talk. I was asked to give a short talk for about a quarter of an hour and on philosophical, spiritual stuff. And then came the time to do the clairvoyance, and the chairman said, "And now Mr. Sadler will give proof of survival." I think, right, and left. And then he went and sat down, and I walked to the front of the platform. And I started walking up and down, which was my usual start to tune in. And I got nothing, absolutely nothing. I walked backwards and forwards again, and do you think I could tune in? No, blank screen. Well, I was beginning to panic and think if I could dig a deep hole and jump in it, I would. And Patricia, who was sitting in the audience, she must have been dying 1,000 deaths for me. But anyway, I sent out a thought to my guides and said, "Can you help me, please?" And a voice as clear as anything came into my head, and it said, "How's the ego now?" And I said, "Gone." Well, I could see then, it lit up. I could see a group of people to one side from the spiritual world who were waiting for me to introduce them to their loved ones sitting out at the front there. And one or two people lit up, so I knew when there was like a halo round, I knew I had to go to them. So I focused on one of them, and a guide brought the person in next to me, to stand next to me so I could describe them. And I thought, thank goodness for that, I'm up and running. But I could have died 1,000 deaths at that night. It's the one and only time it ever happened, and it's the only time I showed any trace of ego. But I thought, I'm not going to do that again. But anyway, it was fine. Went through the rest of the evening, and it was brilliant. But it taught me a lesson about being humble